Hey there, welcome. Today I want to talk about projections. I do a lot of them, and I do them shamelessly. But more and more I'm becoming aware of them. So a projection oftentimes is we end up judging the environment or another person or other people for things that are actually just issues within our own life, our lifestyle, or our habits, or an issue within our own mind. And we're not necessarily aware that we're seeing that. So, one that I've been guilty of is seeing ulterior motives in a lot of people. And I've come to realize a while ago that I had ulterior motives. I wouldn't interact with people unless they gave me something, unless I benefited from it, unless they gave me what I wanted or something I liked or it would make my life better. And then I'd often see in the world other people doing that. And the shameless part comes when we realize that we aren't an individual self. All our ideas and stories and narratives about ourselves, it's mostly falsehood in a bunch of ways. You know, we could look at Buddhism, how they say there's no self and it's all emptiness. But, I can just explain it in a couple simple ways, like that are obvious. We have 5 senses and we have a brain that can create memories of those 5 senses. So those 5 senses are limited. We know that. They've always been limited. They're going to be limited our whole life. We know our memories can be hazy and not perfect and not photographic, basically, not encapsulating all the information. So just there, any idea about ourselves mostly comes with those things. We have images and sounds of ourselves and experiences of ourselves, which have been formed in memory, which is faulty. And so we have these 2 sets of records that are both prone to error and not complete. On top of that, we know that we can misperceive the world. We can look at it in a limited way. We know that we are trained from our environment, from our parents, from adults in our life, from media, from peers, to, create a collage of opinions and judgments and viewpoints, and that these are limited. These are not perfect. These are not the whole story. And so we gather these interpretations and kind of funnels of awareness mixed with our limited memory and our limited senses to create an identity about ourselves. Sometimes mimicking how other people create identities about themselves, the words they use, the ideas they express, the images they create about themselves. And we like to align in that mimicry with these faulty mechanisms. So just that alone, our idea of ourselves is so obviously incomplete, imperfect, not really the full story, definitely not encapsulating the entirety of who we are. We don't even need to go to the whole, there is no self and it's all empty, that the Buddhists like to do. Not that they're wrong, but we don't need to go all the way there, just to recognize that the sense of self is precarious. And that's the case for everybody. And then when we see that, we can understand that projections are almost a way to help the collective self get better, become something more, something with less suffering, with less pain, with more beauty. So when I see ulterior motives in others, it's not a projection of individual towards other individuals. It is just a happening of a collective organism. I was taught ulterior motives by the people around me, even if that was subconscious on their part. I recognize this as faulty because it doesn't align with unconditional love. It doesn't align with unity because it pushes some people away and tries to harness others. I see it in others, not just because it's a projection in myself, but because it exists. Because I only have it in myself because of others. And they only have it in themselves because of others. So the projection is not about individual to individual. It is a pointing out of a collective issue. The issue for the sense of self, like our present awareness, is that sometimes we see the projection when it's in fact something else. So because it's something in me that I need to have changed, and I actively worked on that, maybe I was seeing it at times when it wasn't actually there, and I don't have proof otherwise, but I believed in it because I was believing the projection. And the projection was almost like me afraid and unwilling and uncertain of my own habits and patterns. And so instead of looking at them, it gets pointed to somebody else or some, group of people or whatever. This is easier because it's something you can't change. You can't technically just change another person's will or their experience. You can affect it, you can influence it, but you can't take control of their mind. So it's almost easier to look at other people because deep down we know there's nothing we can do. So it's almost like the lazy option. But if we look at ourselves and see what the projection is trying to say about our own actions, our own behaviors, our own thought patterns and emotional, responses, then we have to change. There's nobody else that can change it for us. There's no one to blame. So projections are kind of beautiful in the sense that when we can recognize them, we can see the things we really need to work on and the things we can work on. They're a sign of something we can actively work on, but due to some kind of defense mechanism or laziness or fear, whatever, it's put on another. It's put on others. And this is common, not just in spiritual discourse, but just in life, complaining about someone messy. Every person I've ever seen complain about someone messy has messy parts of their life. Physically speaking, too, not just, messy emotionally or socially or something. That's just a quick, easy example. And the more we can recognize these projections and then work on them ourselves, it's almost like the clearer we are, the clearer our intuition is. Because I feel like the more I don't really have an ulterior motive, the more I can see when other people are trying to use me or others, and when other people are just being people. They're just flopping around, living their life, on this planet like anybody else, and they don't really have some, strict ulterior motive with being around other people. And you can feel that calmness, you can feel that trust, you can feel that safety and simplicity because the projection has been overcome. The projection has been cleared in our own consciousness. And that's a big thing. We have so much weight placed upon our identity, our sense of self, and if we're good or not, and if we're right and we have our shit together and we're successful, that to face our habits of guilt and shame and fear of not being perfect or not being good, a lot of people are just not going to have the prowess to face the fact that they're making these projections, because it means that they have a thing that's not perfect, or a thing that's not good, or a thing that they would really hate in another person, which is why they're projecting it onto others. So it's really such a beautiful way to test our mettle and test our love and to see what we can change is when we're meditating, when we're mindful, when we catch ourselves blaming, complaining, and judging and labeling others, to see if like, oh, actually, that's kind of lurking around in me. And then to actively take the path of transformation and kind of shift it in ourselves. This is a common topic in like psychology, I'd say, but it's pretty important to stay aware of when we're practicing yoga and meditation and, reading texts of non-duality, because you'll find a lot of things said and written in the yogic traditions, whether Buddhist or Hindu or otherwise. And there's a chance a lot of stuff is projection. There's a chance that when somebody writes that, the world is tainted by desire and lust and passion, and they need to rid themselves of it, that could be a projection, When they are, in like Avadhuta Gita saying, meditation is unnecessary, or, you hear Kabir saying how he needs no ritual or prayer, God is in his very body. This could be a projection of the fact that these yogis, these monks, these practitioners were doing that. They were doing ritual, they were doing prayer, they were meditating like crazy. And so they say it to the world, but they say it to themselves, ideally as well. There's a chance they did reach a state and they really are just sharing a truth of reality. But I think it's good to see like projections could be happening there also, and we can't guarantee they're not. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope it helps us self-reflect on judgments that we send to the world, on standards and expectations we place upon other people, on how we limit our interactions and our life due to these labels and judgments, when in fact they are just judgments placed upon our own self sometimes, and a lot of the time. So thank you so much for watching. Om Sai Ram.